All right, let's go ahead and shift gears a little bit. Get back to some television. We're going to talk about Andor and She-Hulk. The two might bleed into one another. We can start with Andor and then kind of talk a little bit about She-Hulk, but again, they can kind of be the same conversation. Just a little bit of toxicity revolving around these two shows going on right now. It seems like even if something is good, there's still hate, and vice versa. Obviously, we clearly know what She-Hulk is going through or was going through now that the show is over, about being a female lead and the show's direction and kind of how it handled things and whatnot, and just all that. We're basically talking about trolls online. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the trolls online. Does anybody want to kick this off? Does anybody want to start with one specific show? Or Brian, go ahead.
I finally realized what is going on with Marvel. To me, this is so much. You remember when Star Wars isn't for girls? That's what this is.
Long time ago, maybe. Yeah.
I remember it was, at least Star Wars is for boys. Girls can't like Star Wars. Now we're in Marvel's for boys. Girls can't like Marvel.
In 2022.
Yeah. That's what this is. I don't remember. I was sitting there probably on Twitter looking at something when it made me realize, I was like, this is exactly like that. Like, this is, I mean, obviously at the time when Star Wars is for boys, not girls, like, we didn't have, like, Twitter and stuff like that.
I think more so than Star Wars is for boys. It was like Star Wars is for nerds.
Yeah.
And specifically nerdy boys. But now that it's, like, mainstream and cool, people just lose their minds.
Yeah.
There was a post I saw on Twitter. I don't remember if I retweeted it or not, but it was a girl that was like, I remember back in the day I used to love, like when I was younger, I used to love, Star Wars, Star Trek. I played D&D. I loved World of Warcraft. And boys would always say stuff like whenever I said I would like it, they would start giving me 20 questions on it, trying to prove that I liked it. So it wasn't that now females are starting to like this stuff. We always have. You guys just made it so we didn't want to be a part of the discussion with you. Like, that was a big thing that I saw. And now that it's becoming like, they're especially, with She-Hulk and with Captain Marvel, they're trying to push, and Wonder Woman, obviously, they're trying to push women more at the forefront of stuff. Black Widow is another example. But notice how every time it's a female lead,
they just can't handle it. Sometimes, it's just too much for some people. But
it's both sides too. It's and I don't know if we've seen one, but like a female lead show or movie that's considered bad or not received well, and then one that's considered extremely good or well done. You can kind of say like the spectrum, because She-Hulk, I personally really, really, really liked She-Hulk. I liked it a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was unique and different compared to anything that Marvel has done, outside of a few things here and there. But for the majority of people, it probably wasn't received as well as something that Marvel typically does. And then the higher end of the spectrum is something like Wonder Woman, where that movie was received extremely well a few years ago.
The first one.
And it was just like
I liked the second
hit,
one better,
and people loved it, and they just thought it was such a great start for everything. So those are kind of like the two ends of the spectrums. But no matter what, there's always some kind of hate, whether it's good or bad. And it's like when it'll probably never stop. But when is the conversation going to stop? Like how long does this thing have to kind of go in a giant circle and continue? And what's the point? Like, ultimately, what's the point of all of it?
I will say because obviously Star Wars is what I know better, but I have been seeing Dan Slott, which he wrote one of the runs of She-Hulk, like, has been pretty vocal on Twitter specifically about people, like, how much he hates seeing the hate that the show is getting, and like people saying, oh, it needs to be more like this person's run or this person's comic run. And he's like, this is perfection. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Like, coming from him,
yeah,
it's like, yeah, it's great to see people like that come out and speak against the haters, because he's like, yeah, no, this is exactly what I would have wanted to see. So
my thing is like, if you don't enjoy something, just be like, it wasn't for me. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah.
Like, but it becomes
It's
this whole
honestly
like,
not that hard.
it's really not that hard at all. Or it's like people will say how they like it, and people feel like that's an invitation for them to go in their comments and dunk on you for liking it. It's like, no, smack you across the head. Like,
Well, and that kind of flips to the other side of the conversation when it comes to Andor, is people are dunking on people who hate the show, because Andor is obviously widely received very well right now. People are loving it, but the people who really love it are like coming after the people who say that it might not be for them. And so it's just like,
or like dunking on other shows, like they're dunking on Obi-Wan because they like Andor. It's like, what? You can like Andor and not dunk on another show. Like, you don't have to do that.
Yeah, it's crazy to see people, like fans of Star Wars in general, accuse other fans of being snobs because they like a particular Star War. Like, really? Are we going to pull it apart that far to divide actual Star Wars fans?
Gatekeeping Star Wars.
To say that you're a snob because you think one show is better than the other. It's just, and like there's toxicity on both sides of it. There are people who are toxically against everything and kind of like hate everything, or find ways to hate everything and talk about it. And then there are people who will toxically defend everything for being the best. And it's like,
you're not going to convince other people. Like, if I say I don't like something, you're going, I like it, because 9 out of 10 times you're not going to convince me to like it. So like, I don't like, I don't know. Or if or if you like something and I dislike it, I'm not going to have a conversation with you to try and influence you to dislike something. It's like, why are you shouting at all these people about, I don't know.
It's like, instead of people having diaries or live journals, we just have Twitter now. So instead of going onto your live journal and being like, I hated today's episode of She-Hulk, and then here's why. It's just like out open to the public now for like millions of people to see. So like everybody can like pick apart what you said about it at any time, and it's just, ugh.
People thrive off that, though. It's like their lifeblood.
Well, it's just funny because, like, of course, the majority of people, they like to say if you don't like something, you're wrong, or if you like something, you're wrong. But those types of conversations, the nice ones where people are having a good conversation back and forth about whether or not they liked it, and here's why, and let's have a conversation. But what I'm saying is those types of conversations is what started all of this. The discourse and the YouTube shows and the review shows and all of that, like that's where, and then all of a sudden it just all flipped into this world of, if you don't like something, you suck and I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the mentality that it's coming from now. And it's crazy. I mean, it's insane to think that the majority of people, if they like, for example, if someone tweets out that they didn't like episode 5 of Andor, there's someone out there in the universe that's going to reply to them and say, you're stupid, you're dumb, you don't know what you're talking about, go away. Like, it's just insane to think about.
It's just, like, the whole idea of being a bully has flipped. It used to be like, oh, you like Star Wars, what a nerd. And now it's like, oh, you didn't like this episode of Star Wars? You're tasteless and a disgusting human, and I never want to talk to you again. It's like, what?
This, and to Blunden's point, this stuff, I'm fine with that, like having different opinions and like talking about that. I mean, like, you know, I XYZ, blah blah blah. It's when people, for me anyway, it's when people come in unsolicited, uninvited, and it's like, I said I liked something. I said this episode was great. Period. And that doesn't require a conversation about why you didn't like it. Like,
it's just people that want to chime in and have their voices heard, whether or not it's, you know, sometimes it can be super rude comments. But yeah, no, I'm all about constructive criticism and like conversation over what we think worked or didn't work and why, and how it kind of plays out as a whole for the story. But there's just so many people out there that aren't willing to think about it that deeply. They're just like, you suck, Vader's the best.
I know, man. Maul's pretty great.
Only give me Vader at all times.
Vader and Anakin, that's all I care about.
And when you do it, Vader, it's always
I'm
be wrong.
I'm like, to be fair, I'm one of those people where it's like, I hate, I need a different story other than the Skywalker saga, but under my breath, I'm going, give me more Anakin. But, you know,
which we will get a little bit of in Tales of the Jedi.
We're going to get a little bit more of Anakin.
I just found out that the guy that's voicing the Inquisitor is the voice of Mr. Krabs.
He does a lot of voiceover work. Did you not know that?
No, I didn't know who it was.
Oh.
I literally just was like,
it was like,
voice
stuff.
of Mr. Krabs is the voice of this Inquisitor. I was like, sweet.
Who's Mr. Krabs?
He does it. Oh my god.
SpongeBob.
Yeah, from SpongeBob.
Oh
Molly.
Oh my god.
Molly.
I'm the
I thought you
oldest
meant
here.
who's Mr. Krabs, like the actor.
No, she's literally asking
oh my
who
god.
Mr. Krabs is.
I haven't seen it.
Never seen an episode of SpongeBob.
That's a new phase 2.
Clancy
That's
Brown,
a new phase 2 addition to the Patreon. Molly's gonna react to SpongeBob.
SpongeBob is great.
That could be very boring. I don't know.
It could be.
You gotta catch me in the right mood.
There's some gems in SpongeBob. There's some gems.
There's some stuff.
Oh my god!
If you go back and watch it, you're like, how did that get into this?
Oh
like,
yeah, it gets dirty.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. Any final thoughts on the toxicity revolving around these two shows and fandom in general? Either one.
It will never stop. Just
no.
If you see it happening, leave it alone. For the most part, I mean, there are definitely instances where it's worthy to speak up against really toxic stuff, like racism and sexism and homophobia, all that stuff. But I find it best to just try not to get involved too deeply with the discourse.
The mute button's a powerful thing.
Oh, the amount
I have muted so many people on Twitter.
The amount of people I have muted and unfollowed in the span of like 2 months.
Yeah,
I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I do it almost daily on my account, on the main Star Wars Explained account. It's just a daily, like, okay, who am I gonna mute / block today?
Who's it gonna be? Who's the lucky winner?